I'm excited to welcome and introduce our first keynote, Greg Garrett. Greg is the CEO and Managing Director of CGS Advisors, a boutique strategic transformation and innovation advisory firm. Greg is an experienced international keynote speaker, an adjunct professor, the host of You, Me, and Your Top 3 podcast, and author of the best-selling business leadership book, Competing in the Connected World. Greg sits on several private company advisory boards and is an active lead mentor in the Techstars Global Business Accelerator. He has received numerous professional and civic accolades, including Oakland County's 2015 40 Under 40 and Rotary International Paul Harris Fellow, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, young leaders, please welcome Greg Garrett.
Hey, thanks so much, Jason. I hope you guys can see a screen with my picture on it and can hear me. Yeah, good. I see some head nods. Thanks so much. So let's see if I can get the everything working here. Perfect. Listen, you're known by the company that you keep. You know, I first heard this statement many years ago growing up, and I heard it from a really, what I thought was a pretty amazing man who I learned kept really quite good company. He was a collegiate football letter winner. He went on to become the president of the largest company in his industry. He went to Washington and received awards from five-star generals, even negotiated with Jimmy Hoffa on a fairly regular basis and lived to tell about it. All at the same time, he would go to the facilities around the country and he would know the names of the dock workers or the secretaries on different floors or the spouses of the janitorial staff that cleaned his office. Now, he also had a personal side. He had 2 daughters and a grandson. And I didn't really understand this statement of being known by the company you keep until he passed away. When I was 16, I watched box loads of letters come in celebrating his intellect, his style, his politeness, his bravery. They came from industry titans. They came from secretaries. They came from college roommates. They even came from ice cream counter workers, where in retirement, he would sing with some friends outside of the ice cream shop. And I realized my grandfather at the time wasn't telling me just to stay out of trouble and not run with the bad crowd as a teenager. He was giving me life advice. So you're known by the company you keep. I want to share some of the hints today that he put in place. I hadn't thought about this statement for many years, but it turns out that I've somewhat been living by it. See, for the last few decades, when I would work professionally and go to events, people would tell me afterwards, "You're such a great networker." And I felt slimy. I felt like I was a used car salesman. I didn't like to hear that I was such a great networker. It made me feel like I cheapened the relationship. Maybe people feel like I was using people. But when I listened more deeply, I started to understand a bit more. See, about 18 months ago, I launched a project, and I wanted to dig a little deeper on why leaders lead the way they do and understand how the most brave leaders that I know support themselves to get there. And so I started to speak to professional sports coaches, athletes in college, CEOs, technology leaders, entrepreneurs. I asked them all a pretty simple question. With whom do you surround yourself to be a better, braver leader? See, my thesis is that networking in the human scape is much like the network effect. If some of you went to business school, you might remember this as an economic theory that basically said the value of a product or a service increases when there's a number of other users of that same product and service. And this doesn't apply to every product, but take something like social media or a phone. If you just have a single phone, it's very low value. If you have a couple phones, it becomes more valuable. If you have 5 or 6, the value increases. And if you have millions, millions of phones, the network itself becomes more valuable than any one of its nodes. And was part of my thesis when it comes to humans as well, if you really engage in your network. See, my thought was I could probably learn a lot about the company that I keep by learning about the company that they keep, a network of networks, if you will. By asking my network whom they surround themselves with, I've been able to unlock a whole bunch of great stories of mentorship, stories of management, stories of career-shaping memories. That's what I'm here to do today, is to give you some hints that I've gleaned from these people and the company that they keep, to help you reflect on how you can potentially keep the right company to drive leadership, to lean into leadership, not just accept what comes to you. Because success is not an accident. See, the most successful people, success as they define it, they're surrounding themselves with incredible people. No matter if they really recognize that they're doing it or not. I need you to listen to that part. No matter if they recognize it or not. See, most of the folks that I'm interviewing aren't at the end of their career, they're mid-career. They're at the height of where they're driving. And many of them don't put the brake on enough to recognize that they are surrounding themselves. So some people do this with intent, others just kind of fall into it. And there's no right or wrong reason, but every one of these 80 folks that I've interviewed, they're all surrounding themselves with people. So let's reflect a little bit on how that happens. Now, first, I just want to take a quick pause and think a little bit about the environment in which all this leadership is happening. The environment in which we're leading is actually changing. See, thousands of years ago, life was kind of simple. We would all go out and hunt and gather, and then we'd come back around a campfire in the middle of the village, and all of our experiences were pretty similar. You know, the company you kept all had the same basic experiences that you did. But we've kind of made this world, us humans, we've kind of made this world complex. We've connected the world. We've built a bunch of things and a bunch of places and a bunch of modes of transportation. And in some ways, we've made the world really, really quite large. And now this technology thing that allows us to do this today, it's also giving an opportunity to make it small as well. We've embedded technology in our lives. We've embedded technology in the products that we use. We've embedded technology in the experiences and our expectations. And it gives us the opportunity that every one of those things in this complex world becomes everything, like a network of things. And what's that doing is if you have an appliance that you expect to work with your home, that you expect to work with your house, you're actually starting to blur your industry lines. And see, that's important if you believe that this seamless life experience is what most companies, what most organizations are going to be trying to drive towards. It's important to understand that we're really blurring industry lines as you think about who you want to surround yourself with. See, this integration topic is going to be one of the most important for us over the course of the next few years. It used to be okay if a brand or service, a product or service would just work with itself. That was quality. And then you had an expectation that it at least worked with the other products from that same brand. And then maybe you had an expectation that it would work with all the touch points of the brand. Like if you call the call center, you expect them to know how you're using the product. But in the future, and kind of where we are now and leading into the future, we have an expectation that products and services are going to work with other things from the same industry, or maybe from experiences that cross industry boundaries. And this is just a context. It's not telling you how to build the board of people that you should surround yourself with. It just tells you that you may need to think a little bit different about the type of people and the experiences that they've had that you're going to surround yourself with. So that all leads to basically saying there's this big capability that's going to be very important. What do I call the integration bridge? Of course, technology, for the technologists in the crowd, yes, obviously we need technical integration. And for you business strategists in the crowd, obviously we need business model integration and partnerships like no other time in history. But we also need human integration. We need empathetic views from one another. We need to be able to cross the chasm, like in this picture here, and build bridges so that we can actually understand from different perspectives so that we can truly integrate experiences. It's my hope, it's my belief that people are inherently good. But we do need to take a step back sometimes and understand, are we mutually setting goals that will allow us to be able to see the future together? I want you to think about, if I was in a room, I would ask you all to see if I can put your hands up, but we don't need to do this here. If you've been to a middle school dance, and you guys, typically, some of you will raise your hand high and others will keep your hand low. And typically I'll say, I don't mean the middle school dance in the last few weeks. That would be kind of weird if you were at a middle school dance in the last few weeks. But if you remember a middle school dance, you likely remember it because it was either extremely positive or extremely negative. Positive maybe because you got a kiss at the end of the night, or you got a second date, or some kind of something that reinforced that your dance moves that night were pretty good. And if that's the case, likely if you go to a wedding in next month, the dance moves that you'll be doing at the wedding will look a lot like the ones that you did in middle school. And this is because humans, middle schoolers and leaders, executives, we all like positive reinforcement, and we grow up and we learn the patterns when we're positively reinforced. And so this is important for you to understand, that if you are surrounding yourself with people that have been successful in the past, and only those kind of people, but the environment of success maybe has changed, you may need to broaden the folks that you're building around you. If you only have industry titans that for the last 30 years have marched forward, or within a single firm have marched forward, but the context in which they're competing now is changing, will their perspective be good enough? And this is what they call industry dominant logic. This is this is a leader inertia. It keeps people slow because they only keep in the lane that they've always known. So you got to ask yourself, are you surrounding yourself with the right dance partner? There is no one dance partner that's right for each of you. Some of you will need someone who has danced more and can teach you the steps. Others will maybe need you to help you listen, to hear the music change. Others, you know how to dance. You just need to understand the basic rhythm of this and maybe learn part of a step. Each of you will need a different dance partner, but you have to really ask yourself, are you thinking about your dance partner as you go through your career and go through life? So let's talk about how to really do this, right? My premise is that each of us needs to form a bit of a virtual advisory board. I mean, think about it. Companies, organizations, they build advisory boards that provide non-binding strategic advice to the management team there of where to go and how to move forward. Do you have that same type of board that you surround yourself with? So in these 80 conversations that I've had, I didn't ask people to tell me the different types. Sometimes people do it that way. But I've started to inventory with my team. I've started to inventory out, when they talk about these 3 or 4 folks, what types of folks are leaders surrounding themselves? What type of leaders are other leaders surrounding themselves with? I just want to inventory these quickly for you for your reflection. Some folks, maybe the most common is a manager or a boss or an investor, somebody with some a real control type of relationship. Okay, and getting close to them can be helpful in the here and now, or might be able to help over the long term. But some people surround themselves and really lean in to these kind of control-based mentorship advisory positions. Others, another class, is what I call the journey mate, someone who you've been on the journey with. You've been down in the trenches. They're peer. It's your peer group. You've earned the stripes. You've got the wounds. You've got the bruises. And a lot of this is based on trust. And these oftentimes are reflected on over long careers. 20 years ago, I met so-and-so, and we've stayed together. Even though we've gone different places, we still speak with one another. They understand me. They understand where I came from. We have common experiences. Another is what we call the been there, done that. These are usually people that are more senior than you, or at least within your industry, within your career. You can aspire to be like them. And what you're typically looking for there is maybe motivation, but you're also looking, hey, they know the path. Let me follow their path. They've been there. And this is a really important one. This is maybe the most traditional, normal mentor type. But you have to be careful because of all that context I just gave around the world connecting and industry line blurring. Is this going to be good enough, or do you also need an adjacent ecosystem expert? Somebody who maybe isn't from your industry, but from an industry that your industry is kind of starting to shape towards. Maybe not from your organization, but an organization that your company is trying to aspire to be like. Can you reach across the aisle? If you're in the automotive industry and you see a blurring of auto and insurance, perhaps, or auto and freight transportation, whom do you know from that other industry? Can you reach across that aisle and start building those relationships? One that starts prevalent almost all the time is what we call the foundation, the rock. These are the spouses. These are the parents. These are the lifelong friends that remind you who you are. They keep you whole. And more so in the last year, and I won't say that it's because of COVID, but it certainly parallels that. More so than ever, leaders from all walks of life are starting to talk about their spirituality, and they speak about it in different ways. Some of them speak about their God. Some of them speak about their conscience that was programmed by a parent. Some of them speak about just peace within, that they just need self-reflection time. And for them to put that, when I ask them, who are your top 3 people you surround yourself with, for them to put that there, they're being pretty brave to say, I listen to myself, I listen to my soul. So these are the 6 most prevalent types that I've reached out. And there seems to be, across those 6, there seems to be about 4 styles. And you have to realize, if you've got those 6 and you kind of build here are the people I want to surround myself. You also have to figure out what style will work for you. There's just the pure coach. This is absolutely, when people think mentor, it's the person who can get the best out of you, who can guide you there a little bit. There's the reverse mentor. More and more, especially leaders that have large teams, they're talking about how the people below them actually inspire them to be better, spending more time, especially as they're getting time via mechanisms like this where they don't have transit, spending time talking to their teams and celebrating their teams and spending more and more time to learn from them and have this be a two-way process. This one's a phenomena that I've been impressed with. And honestly, even though I podcast and I speak like this and I'm an author, I didn't fully recognize it until I got into these conversations. But many leaders are saying, I can go surround myself with the best in my industry by buying their book or subscribing to their podcast or going to their speeches. It's one way, but they're finding a lot of value in it. And the last one I really want you to think as deeply as you can about this is what we call the prism, the person that helps you bend light. They're the catalyst. And your catalyst is going to be different, each one of you. Some of you need an energizer, the charismatic person to lift you up. Others are going to sometimes need to be the connector, the person that says, hey, let me connect you with other people. They're the glue prism. Others, you dreamers out there, you need the COO, the person who's going to ground you and make you realize it's great to dream, but we got to get started. Let's do it together. Those seem to be the types. So I'm still on this journey. The asterisk ones in there seem to be the ones that when I inventory are the strongest, most repeatable, but we're starting to now try to measure this stuff to say, what patterns can we find? If these are the types, when do they usually assemble? It's been a fun project. My suggestion to you is build an action plan and be intentful around this. Simply make a list of the folks that you surround yourself with, just reflect on it. Assess where you want to go and see if you feel you have gaps. Then be as bold as you can be to fill them. Be bold. Go out and ask people to be your mentor. It'll be unbelievable what you get if you just ask. Don't be afraid. Then once you have these folks, you got to decide, how are you going to manage them? Are you going to be the hub and each one of them are spoken? It's a one-on-one conversation, or is it a web? Are you going to really bring these people together? Hey, let's meet for coffee every month and have a conversation amongst us. And how often are you going to meet with them? Simple plan, really quite hard to do. You have to be intentful around it. And it's not for everyone, but I would suggest it almost is. Like I said at the beginning, some of you might just say, well, I'm pretty lucky, I don't need to worry about it. Or I'm okay just feeling lost sometimes. Or I'm extremely creative and I don't really need to surround myself with people. But if you reflect, if you take the exercise and write down your top 3, you'll likely realize you are surrounding yourself with people. And you just have to decide, are they the right folks? So, as we're rounding the corner here, if I can join your advisory board just for a few minutes and give you a couple pieces of advice. Leaders, which I think you all are if you're attending an event like this, they make things happen. They don't let things happen to them. So my advice to you would be, live your life with no regrets. I've interviewed 80 people and I've lived a while in the world. I've very rarely had people tell me what the things that they regret are the things that they do. Most of the time they tell me they regret the things they didn't do. So be brave, live that way. Surround yourself with people that you think fill your blind spots. It's going to be uncomfortable because they might push you in different ways. But as you think about the changing world, the changing industry, the changing company, surround yourself with people that will help you see around those corners. Understand what capabilities are your weaknesses and draw those people in. Those are my pieces of advice as you build your board. Now, listen, you are certainly known by the company you keep. I hope I've built that out as at least something that will stick in your mind. And today I have a sense that I've had some pretty great company. You guys are all part of the young leaders of the Detroit Economic Club. You're members and leaders in this city, in this region, and I'm honored that you've let me be part of your company today. Thank you. I will only ask that I think the DEC staff is going to share a few links into the chat. And I suggest that you start your bravery right now. If you think this kind of thing is interesting, one of those links will be the podcast. And I'd love it if you'd listen to some of those folks and listen to these 80 folks, not just me. The second, there'll be a link for a book as well. If you like this kind of bravery, logic, and leadership in this connected world, perhaps there's a hint or two in there. There's also a survey that if you're interested in the transformation around this, feel free to take that. But the one I really want you to be brave with is those are all my connections there. If you think speaking with me or just staying in touch with me is important, practice right now. I'm telling you, reach out to people that you're not normally reaching out to. Connect. It'll mean a lot in your life. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Jason, back to you.
Greg, thank you. That was tremendous. And I know for me, this is a huge personal point of growth that I need to have. So thank you for sharing this. Having a virtual advisory board in a time like this and in all times clearly is important. So thank you. Thank you.